My family replaced me with my adopted brother for 15 years. They made his favorite cake on my 16th birthday. Now they came back begging for money because they spent everything on him and went bankrupt, but what I gave them sent them all to jail and destroyed their lives forever. I'm 23 years old, about to graduate with honors from college, working part-time at a coffee shop while finishing my classes. And honestly, I need to tell this story because what I did like 3 months ago still has me processing whether I'm a bad person or if I just gave my parents exactly what they deserved. I guess to understand all of this, I have to start from the beginning. When I was 8 years old and my parents decided I wasn't enough for them anymore. It was February. I remember it was cold and I was watching cartoons in the living room when my parents sat down with me on the couch. You know, with those serious faces adults make when they're about to say something important, and they told me they were going to adopt a child. His name was Evan. He was 7 years old, almost my age, and according to them, this was going to be wonderful because I was going to have a brother. At that moment, I didn't really understand what all that meant. Like, I thought it would be like having a friend, Cape at home or something. I don't know. I was 8 years old and my biggest concern was whether I'd have to share my toys. I wish that had been the only problem. Evan came home like a month later, in March, I think. And at first, everything seemed normal. My parents, my mom and dad, were super excited. They bought a ton of new things for him, decorated the guest room completely. And I thought, well, it's normal. He's new here. He needs to feel welcome. What I didn't know was that that level of attention was never going to go down. Never. And that I had basically just become another piece of furniture in the house. The first signs were subtle, I guess, or maybe not so subtle, but I was too young to realize what was really happening. My 9th birthday was like 2 months after Evan arrived, and I remember my mom threw a small party, invited some of my friends from school. Nothing fancy, but it was fine. The thing is that when it came time to open presents, there were like 3 for me and 5 for Evan, on my birthday. My parents said it was so Evan wouldn't feel excluded, so he'd understand that he was also part of the family. And I just stood there thinking, but it's my birthday, right? I didn't say anything because I didn't want to seem selfish. You know? I was 9 years old and they were already conditioning me to feel guilty for wanting attention on my own special day. And that's how it all started, basically. Every important event in my life became an opportunity to give Evan something too. Elementary school graduation. Evan received a new bicycle to celebrate that his sister is so smart. My first day of middle school, Evan received a new computer, so he can do his homework better. My parents always had an excuse. There was always a logical reason why Evan needed things at moments that were supposed to be mine. And honestly, over time, I stopped questioning it because it was easier than fighting. The worst part wasn't just the gifts, it was everything. All the attention was on Evan all the time. Evan got an 8 on a test, and my parents celebrated it like he'd won the Nobel Prize. They'd make his favorite food, take him to the movies, whatever. I'd get straight 10 seconds, and the most I'd get was a, very good, Olivia. We knew you could do it. While they kept watching TV, Evan wanted to go to the amusement park, we'd all go. I wanted to go to a science museum for a school project. My parents said Evan would get bored, so we better not go. Every single time. My best friend Hannah was the only person who really saw what was happening. She came to my house often when we were in middle school, and one day she told me, "Hey, Olivia, do you realize your parents basically ignore you when Evan's around?" And I laughed, like trying to make it seem like it wasn't such a big deal, and I told her she was exaggerating, but the truth is, she was right and I knew it. I'd known it for years, but admitting it out loud meant accepting that my own parents had replaced me with a newer and apparently better model. Evan, for his part, became more and more manipulative over time. Like he learned exactly what buttons to push with my parents to get what he wanted, and many times what he wanted was to make me look bad or take away the little I had. Once, I was like 14 years old. I saved for months to buy myself a new phone because mine was super old, and my parents refused to buy me one. I worked babysitting kids in the neighborhood, helping with gardening, whatever, and finally I saved up enough money. The day I was going to go buy it, Evan told my parents that I had been mean to him, that I had pushed him or something. Completely false, but they believed him without even asking for my version. They punished me by taking away the money I'd saved for like 3 months. And guess what? A week later, Evan had a new phone. The same model I wanted. My parents bought it with my money as an apology, because according to them, he was very sad about what I supposedly did to him. Years passed, and the situation only got worse. When I entered high school, I was on the honor roll, participated in debate club, worked part-time after school, and my parents basically didn't attend anything of mine because there was always something of Evan's that was more important. His soccer games, where he didn't even play, just sat on the bench, were more important than my debate competitions where I won trophies. His piano recitals where he played basic songs were more important than my honor society induction ceremony. There was always a reason, there was always an excuse, and it always ended up being the same. Evan needed more support because he'd had a difficult life before being adopted. Evan needed to feel loved. Evan needed to know he was part of the family. And what about me? I was the biological daughter. My place was supposed to be secure, right? Well, turns out no. Turns out being the biological daughter meant my emotional needs didn't matter because you know we love you, Olivia. We don't need to show it to you all the time like Evan. I heard that phrase probably 100 times during my adolescence, and each time it hurt more. The breaking point, the moment when something inside me just completely broke, was my 16th birthday. 16. You know? It's supposed to be a super special birthday, especially for girls, and I wasn't asking for a huge party or anything extravagant. I just wanted a day where I felt important to my family. I'd mentioned like 1,000 times that I wanted a vanilla cake. It's been my favorite flavor forever. Everyone in the house knew it. Hannah helped me plan a small gathering. We invited like 10 people, and I was excited because for once my parents seemed to be really involved in the preparations. The day came. My friends started arriving at the house around 6 in the evening. Everything was going well. We were putting on music and laughing. And then my mom brought out the cake. It was chocolate. Evan's favorite. I just stared at it and felt like someone had thrown a bucket of cold water on me. I asked my mom, "Is this for real?" And she said yes, that Evan can't eat vanilla because he's allergic to it. I'd seen him eat vanilla ice cream 1,000 times, and that it wasn't a big deal. That cake was cake and I should be grateful. My friends were super uncomfortable. Hannah was looking at me with that face like, what the fuck? And I felt like I was going to explode or cry or both. But what really made me explode was when my dad sang happy birthday to Evan first. Like he literally started singing to Evan on my birthday. And when someone told him, "Hey, it's Olivia's birthday, not Evan's," my dad laughed and said, "Oh, well, Evan is also celebrating because his sister is having a birthday. Can you believe it?" At that moment, something in my brain just said, "Okay, enough. It's over." I stood up, grabbed my backpack, and left. Just like that, in the middle of my own birthday party. My friends followed me. Hannah basically ran after me as I walked down the street with no destination, and she hugged me while I cried on the sidewalk like 3 blocks from my house. My parents didn't even come out looking for me. They didn't even call me. Later, I found out from Hannah that they continued with the party like nothing happened, cut the chocolate cake, and even put on music. My 16th birthday, and they didn't even notice when the birthday girl left. That night, I stayed at Hannah's house, and her mom saw my face red from crying so much and made me hot chocolate and didn't ask questions, just hugged me and told me I could stay as long as I needed. I slept in Hannah's room, in a sleeping bag on the floor, and I remember I stayed awake until like 4 in the morning thinking about everything, about years and years of being the second choice, of being invisible, of not mattering. And something changed in me that night. Seriously. It was like a part of me that had been trying to earn my parents' love just gave up and stopped trying. The next day, I went back to my house because, well, I was 16 years old and didn't have many options. But from that moment, I started planning my escape. I became super strategic, started working more hours after school and on weekends, opened a bank account my parents didn't know about, started looking for information about scholarships and universities that were far enough away. My parents probably thought I'd gotten over my birthday tantrum because I stopped complaining and seeking their attention, but the truth is I had simply stopped caring. During the next 2 years, I became a ghost in my own house. I went to school, worked, slept, and barely interacted with my family. Evan noticed the change and several times tried to mess with me, like trying to provoke me so my parents would punish me like before, but I simply ignored him. My parents basically didn't notice I'd stopped participating in family dinners or weekend outings. They were too busy with Evan and his stuff. Hannah and her family became my real family during those years. Her older brother, Jason, was like 24 years old at that time and worked for a moving company. And when I told him my plans to leave as soon as I turned 18, he offered to help me for free when the time came. Hannah's mom let me eat at their house almost every day, and Hannah would go with me to look at apartments in the nearest city, which was like 45 minutes from where we lived. I found a perfect place like 2 months before turning 18, a one-bedroom apartment that was within my budget because I'd been saving like crazy. I worked at a pizza place after school and sometimes on weekends, and I'd saved enough for the deposit and like 3 months' rent. I'd also applied to several universities and got a full scholarship to a public university in the same city where the apartment was. The day of my 18th birthday was possibly the best day of my life up to that point. My parents, they weren't even home. They'd gone to one of Evan's soccer tournaments that was like 2 hours away, and I took advantage of the empty house. Jason came with his truck, Hannah came to help me, and the three of us got all my stuff out in literally 2 hours. I didn't have much, honestly. Most of my clothes, my books, my old computer, some posters, and that's it. I left the house keys on the kitchen table with a note that said, "I moved out, don't look for me. Olivia." Short, direct, no drama. I didn't tell them where I was going, didn't leave them my new address. Nothing. I blocked their numbers, blocked Evan on all social media, and basically disappeared from their lives like they'd wished I would disappear for years. The first few months were tough. I'm not going to lie. Learning to live alone at 18 is complicated, but it was also liberating like you have no idea. For the first time in years, I could do whatever I wanted without having to worry about whether Evan was going to get something better, without having to compete for attention, without having to justify my existence. I started college that same summer, enrolled in summer courses to get ahead on credits, kept working at the pizza place, and completely threw myself into building a life that was mine. I made new friends, went out on weekends, went to the gym, literally became a completely different person. Hannah would visit me often and tell me that my parents had tried to look for me at first, that they'd gone to her house asking about me, but Hannah's mom told them she didn't know where I was, a lie. But I love her for covering for me. 5 years passed. 5 complete years without talking to my parents, without knowing anything about Evan, without any contact. During that time, I finished my degree. I was about to graduate at the top of my class. I had a part-time job I loved. I'd had a couple of relationships. I'd done therapy to process all the trauma from my childhood, and honestly, I was at the best moment of my life. I was 23 years old, about to graduate with honors, and I'd achieved everything completely alone, without my parents' help, without their support, without anything. And then, like 3 months before my graduation, I received a message from an unknown number. It was my mom. I don't know how she got my new number, probably through someone, and the message said something like, "Olivia, I know it's been years. I know things ended badly, but I need to talk to you. It's important. Please." I stared at the message for like 10 minutes, not knowing what to do. Part of me wanted to ignore it, block it immediately, but another part, I don't know, was curious. What could be so important after 5 years? I replied that if she wanted to talk, it had to be in a public and neutral place. We agreed to meet at a pizza place, ironically, not the same one where I worked, on a Saturday afternoon. I arrived like 15 minutes early because I wanted to have control of the situation. I chose a table where I could see the entrance and waited. My hands were shaking. I'm not going to lie. And I regretted like 5 times having accepted before they arrived. When my parents came in, yes, both of them came, I wasn't expecting that. I almost didn't recognize them. They looked old, tired. My mom had way more gray hair, and my dad had gained weight. They sat across from me, and there was a super awkward silence where nobody knew what to say. Finally, my mom started with the typical, "You look good," and I just said thanks. My dad asked how I'd been all these years, and I responded with short answers, like, "Good. I studied. I work." Nothing elaborate. After like 10 minutes of awkward small talk, we got to the real point of the meeting. Turns out they were in financial trouble. Serious trouble. Even, who was now 22 years old, had wanted a new car for his birthday, a BMW or something like that. Super expensive. And my parents, being the geniuses they are, had taken out a giant loan to buy it for him. The thing is that Evan didn't have a job, was still living with them, and obviously couldn't pay for the car. Now my parents were in debt up to their necks, were behind on house payments, and basically were desperate. And there I was, sitting in that pizza place, listening to my parents ask me for money after 5 years of zero contact. They didn't ask how I really was. They didn't ask about my upcoming graduation. They didn't apologize for years of neglect and favoritism. They just wanted money. My mom even cried, said they had no one else to turn to, that I was their only hope, that please help them because we were family. I stayed quiet for a while, just looking at them. And honestly, I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me felt sadness. Like these people who are supposed to love me are here asking me for money, like I'm a bank. And another part felt pure rage. I asked them, "Where were you when I needed help paying for college? Where were you on my 16th birthday? Where were you all those years you made me feel invisible?" My dad didn't know what to say. My mom just cried more. I told them I was going to think about it, that I needed time to process all this, and I left. I walked back to my apartment, which was like 20 minutes away, and the whole way I was thinking. Part of me, the part that had done therapy and supposedly had healed, told me I should be the bigger person, that I should help them, because two wrongs don't make a right. But another part, the part that was still that one 6-year-old girl crying on her birthday, wanted revenge. I took like 2 weeks to decide what to do, and during that time I investigated a bit about their situation. From things Hannah told me and from things I found on social media, Evan had his Instagram public. The idiot. I confirmed that everything my parents had told me was true. They were really financially screwed. The BMW they'd bought for Evan was in photos everywhere, and he basically spent his time partying without working. And then I got the idea. I don't know where it came from exactly, probably from watching too many movies or something, but I decided that if they were going to come ask me for help after years of treating me like trash, I was going to give them exactly what they deserved. I searched online and found a place that sold fake money, like bills that looked real but obviously weren't. I ordered like $1,000 in $20 and $50 bills. They arrived at my apartment in a week in a normal envelope. I contacted my mom and told her I had decided to help them, that I had saved some money and could give them a few $1,000s. She was super grateful, crying on the phone and saying I was such a good daughter and that she knew she could count on me and all that shit. We agreed to meet again, this time at a coffee shop near their house because according to her, it was more convenient for them. And the day of the meeting, I arrived with the envelope full of fake money. I gave it to my mom. She didn't even check it well, just saw there were a bunch of bills and hugged me crying. My dad thanked me probably 50 times, and I just smiled and said I hoped this would help them. I left there feeling a mix of guilt and satisfaction, but honestly more satisfaction than guilt. What happened next was better than I had imagined. Turns out Evan, the genius, decided to take part of the money my parents supposedly had to pay debts and went with his friends to a casino that was like an hour away. He tried to exchange the fake bills for chips, and obviously they caught him immediately. The casino called the police. Evan was arrested for attempted use of counterfeit currency, and a huge mess ensued. I found out about all this because Hannah called me dying of laughter, telling me that her mom had heard gossip that Evan had been arrested at a casino. I searched local news, and sure enough, there it was. A small article about a 2-year-old man arrested for trying to use counterfeit bills. It didn't say his full name, but I knew it was him. My parents tried to contact me after that, sent me like 100 messages saying they needed to talk urgently, that something terrible had happened with the money, but I blocked them again, this time forever. I changed my number, made sure they had no way to contact me, and basically erased them from my life again. Do I feel bad about what I did? Sometimes, honestly. Like, there are moments when I think maybe I went too far, that maybe I should have been the bigger person and simply told them I wasn't going to give them money, period. But then I remember all those years of being ignored, of being the second choice, of crying on my birthday because they didn't even make me the cake I asked for. And the guilt evaporates. Evan got out of jail after like 2 weeks, according to what I heard from Hannah, but now he has a criminal record and probably legal problems that will last him years. My parents are still in debt, maybe more now, because they probably had to pay lawyers or bail or who knows what. And me? Well, I graduated like a month ago with the highest honors, got an amazing job in my field, and I'm planning to move to a bigger apartment. The weekend after everything happened with the casino and the arrest, my girlfriend and I went to a spa, got massages, facials, the whole package. She knows the whole story. was super understanding, and while we were in the relaxation room after the massages, she told me, "You know what you did was wrong, right?" And I responded, "Yes, I know." But it was also right in some poetic and twisted way. She laughed and said she was officially the girlfriend of a low-level criminal, and I told her that technically I didn't commit any crime because I just gave an envelope to my mom. It's not my fault Evan decided to take that money to a casino. I don't know if my parents will ever understand the damage they did to me during all those years. Probably not. People like them rarely have that kind of introspection. Evan definitely isn't going to learn anything from this. He's probably still blaming everyone but himself. And honestly, I don't care anymore. I spent too many years of my life trying to earn their love and approval. Years I'm not going to get back. And I'm not going to spend even one more minute thinking about them more than necessary. Am I a bad person for what I did? Maybe. Do I care? Not really. They had years to be better parents, years to treat me like I mattered, and instead they chose Evan over and over and over again. I just gave them a little preview of what it feels like to be let down by the people you trust. I guess now we're even. Or something like that. Life goes on, I move forward, and they can continue with their decisions and their consequences. End of story.